everyone, and welcome back to We're Watching Star Trek, the original series. I am your host, Brandon, and somewhere way off to my right, another side of town, but still technically to my right, is Paul.
Yeah. Hey, what's up, guys? Mellow greetings. I'm here again for another episode. Unfortunately, Dan's not with us here today, but we're going to have him in spirit, so let's get it going.
Well, that makes it sound like a lot worse than it really is. Like he's here in spirit.
Hey!
He just can't make it today, that's all.
I'm just saying, hey, no, hold on. Oh my gosh. Like, I'm going to eulogy over here.
It's not that bad. I mean, I hope it's not that bad. He didn't clarify, but Jesus.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
I was just saying all his good vibes are going to miss. That's what I'm trying to say, all his good energy.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
What a great intro.
Wow. Kicking this one off right. Today we're covering Season 1, Episode 19, entitled Tomorrow is Yesterday. And the original air date for this was January 26th, 1967, which is actually kind of important given the events of the episode.
Yep.
But
okay.
This one starts not with the Enterprise orbiting a planet, but with a shot of a U.S. Air Force jet maneuvering on an airfield, which that really threw me off. I thought maybe I was like watching the wrong thing. Like, did something queue up incorrectly on Paramount?
Yeah, I thought it was like almost like an old commercial or something for a minute. I don't know why.
Yeah, I was real confused. But there is a man at this U.S. base named Webb, and he's monitoring a radar, and he reports to his captain that he has a large blip on his radar screen. So the captain asks him how the craft approached, and Webb says that there was no approach. It just kind of appeared there. And the captain calls air defense thinking that it might be a UFO, which I don't know if, I think they're using UFO throughout this episode just as, literally an unidentified flying object. Like, it's something flying, They don't know what it is, and not like an alien.
I assume this came out around the Roswell time, right? So maybe it may have been the idea of an alien. I'm not sure.
When was the Roswell thing?
I'm not sure. I thought late 50s, 60s, right? I'm not sure.
Actually, let's go ahead. That was in 47, apparently. So this is 20 years after that.
So I'm assuming that, but the term UFO normally means alien after that moment.
Yeah,
every time you say the term UFO, people think alien. So
yeah. But at this point, I'm already into this episode. When I was watching it the other day, I was like, yeah, it's so different already that I was pretty into it.
Yep.
So we get some jets scrambling, and then we cut to a shot of the Enterprise just flying through regular sky, which was really, really weird to see as well.
Really odd, yeah. It was, and I think it's because it was a nice blue sky instead of a night sky.
Yeah.
If it would have been a night sky, it wouldn't be that awkward. But yeah, that really blue sky was. First of all, it was kind of hard to see too because the color of the Enterprise kind of matched the clouds too. It was a bit weird.
I wonder, if the Enterprise is rated for flying within atmospheres, if they ever planned on it to actually, enter an atmosphere like that, because I would think that if most ships at that time are just built for, withstanding 0 atmospheres of space, but apparently they, they thought ahead of time.
Do they land?
Yeah.
Have we seen any ships land yet?
We have not. No, just the Galileo, the shuttle.
So it's always the small shuttles that land instead of the big ship.
Yeah, or they beam. Yeah, most of the time they just beam down to the planet.
Oh, keep track of that. I never thought about that.
Yeah, so we get the show opening, and then we come back to a captain's log from Kirk, which is actually one of the most useful ones we've had this series, because we have no fucking clue what's happening, why, if we're starting with the U.S. military and why they're, basically at Earth. So the log just explains that they were en route to Starbase 9 for a resupply when a black star with a high gravitational attraction dragged them towards the star, and so they used all their warp power in reverse. But when they broke away, they were sent flying through space like a slingshot. So it was like a sling, or like a rubber band, I think is how Kirk describes it. And then they just found themselves where they are now, which I would have said when, but
My thing is, they said black star, not black hole. I find that kind of interesting.
Yeah, just black star.
Yeah, I don't know if when the term black hole started using it often for that. I'm curious.
Actually, that was going to be one of the things I was going to say for the end, but since we're touching on that now, the trivia for this episode says that later in 1967, physicist John Archibald Wheeler would popularize the term black hole to refer to the phenomenon that Kirk describes as a black star. So.
Okay. I just asked the question. There we go. Thanks, brother. I know that. I was curious.
Yep. So they just called it black star because they didn't know what to call it yet.
Oh.
Yeah. So during this narration, like during the captain's log, we get some shots of Kirk and the crew. They're on like a really like darkened bridge, like all the lights are out, and they're getting up off the floor and they're getting back to their stations. They had obviously just been thrown around. And Spock then explains that they're running just on impulse power, and the auxiliary power should be on pretty soon. And then he helps Uhura off the floor as the power comes back on and like helps her get back to her station. So Kirk is addressing the entire ship and orders them to do damage control on all the decks, and he wants them to report any casualties and their operational readiness. And I'm like, man, we're probably going to have to add a lot to the casualty count. For like, they were thrown so hard they went backwards in time.
Yeah, and I said, "Oh, he making announcements again." Uh-oh, like
Right.
that's rare.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, I know we just had something going on, guys, but here you go. Here's what's going on. Like, he actually said something, which was kind of a thing finally.
Yeah, another one of those instances where it sucks to be anybody not in the bridge because they just have no fucking clue what's happening.
Yeah.
So Kirk asks Uhura to contact Starfleet and warn them about the position of the Black Star, and Spock then tells Kirk that the crew is reporting that there were only minor injuries, so no casualties, which is insane. Like nobody hit their head on the wall or something.
Shocking.
He goes on to say that the warp engines are non-operational and that Scotty has overridden the helm and is holding them in an orbit on impulse power. Spock also says he believes that when they broke free from the Black Star that they were thrown towards Earth because that's the direction that they were headed. So he thinks that maybe, that's why they're where they are. And so they put the outside view of the big screen in front of them on the bridge, and they see just like regular ground below them, like, just Earth. And Spock says that they have enough of power to escape, to achieve escape velocity so they can, start climbing a little bit because they were actually fairly close to the ground, like just regular airplane height.
That's kind of weird too.
Yeah, so Kirk orders Sulu to gain altitude, and Sulu's like, hey, the helm isn't responding correctly. And then Uhura reports that she can't get through to Starfleet, but she's picking up another signal. So they listen to the signal, and it's just a regular like radio broadcast talking about the upcoming space mission to put men on the moon for the first time. So that's what I figured where, they got thrown back to around 1969, which is, It's funny because that's literally just 2 years after they filmed this. They basically they went 2 years back in time, so they didn't have to do much like guessing or anything.
Guessing what was going on. It was kind of just make yesterday, pretty much.
Yep. So Kirk mentions the time period of the moon landing, and Spock says that the whiplash from pulling away from the star put them into a time warp and sent them backwards in time. So that's how they got where they are. Which actually, it's pretty crazy because another thing from the trivia was that, Kirk mentioned the moon landing thing, and obviously that wouldn't happen for another 2 years in real life. And I guess that this was the first prediction of the correct decade of that accomplishment in a major science fiction work. So they got it closer than anybody else.
Just guess. Okay, see, and that was my thing about the moon shot. I thought it was a reference to something real. Now you're saying that. I thought, oh, okay, they made something up, and then later on, they got to the moon.
Yeah, I guess the previous closest guesses in motion pictures and television, most of the people around that time put the lunar mission sometime in the 70s at the earliest. So for Star Trek, they were just like, yeah, it's within the next couple of years. And then they were right, which is pretty crazy.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so Uhura picks up transmissions from the U.S. military, and Spock confirms that there's an aircraft closing in on them. So Kirk wants to put some distance between them and the jet, but the jet just stays with them because, they scrambled a jet and it's checking everything out. The pilot of the jet gets a visual contact with the Enterprise and describes it to his commanding officer, while the crew of the Enterprise is listening in on these comms. So they're like, what? This is pretty crazy. We got this dude chasing us. We don't really know what to do. So the pilot gets orders to close in on the Enterprise and either force it to land or disable it. And Spock warns about the jet's weaponry. He says that they have nuclear capabilities and that it would do some pretty good damage to their ship. Yeah, I'd imagine that thing's not rated for nuclear blasts, although it did pretty well in the...
I thought it would be. I thought since whatever they use now that time has to be so much stronger that nuclear bomb should be nothing to them.
Yeah, if it survived that blast from their encounter with the Romulans, that was an old nuclear warhead. So it would basically be this.
But maybe the shields aren't working 100% because the whole whatever happened with the Black Star thing.
Yeah, they are just basically on backup power. So
the one thing I found really interesting was the idea of a jet versus the Enterprise.
Yeah, I feel like the jet's got the advantage.
I feel like that would have been a very interesting a very interesting episode, more than what happened.
Right.
Like the whole idea of regular ships against the Enterprise, and Kirk trying his best not to stop the situation, to stop them without killing them or killing anybody on the ship. That sounds like a really interesting episode to me. A lot of good things they could have made a little bit better, because that whole dynamic is really cool.
I feel like if it was going to be just a fight to the death, I'm torn between, because the Jet's got the maneuverability, right? Because the Enterprise
Uh-huh.
is not meant to maneuver in that kind of atmosphere.
Hmm.
But the Enterprise definitely has some good weapons. And they obviously, as we're about to find out, they have a tractor beam, which isn't even meant to be a weapon, that apparently can be used as a weapon. So I don't know,
Hmm.
man. I think if the Jet can stay mobile and just be fast, I bet it could take out the Enterprise in this situation.
Well, the thing is, I don't know how strong the Enterprise's shields are right now, but a bigger thing is the Enterprise is caring about saving life. The
Right,
Jet is thinking about just destroying.
right.
So I'm assuming the Jet would do something crazy to try to kill him, rather than Kurt holding back because he's trying to protect life over winning.
Yeah.
So it just sounds interesting. If that would have been part of the episode, a little more episode, I think it would have been cool.
And can you imagine how crazy it is for this pilot to see something that's basically the size of an aircraft carrier just flying around up in the
Well,
sky?
but that's my issue though. You can't tell that. Like
Yeah,
like
until you
we
get
we know
close
what
to it.
the Enterprise's idea, or whatever, but it's like they never put in scale the shit a jet compared to that damn Enterprise.
Right.
Like it never looks menacing. Like the only time I've ever seen that is one episode where the one where he was going out to the ship and it got closer, realized the ship was like as big as the sun,
Yeah.
and he got close to it. Like that, or big as the planet. Those I've seen no moments like that. But we never see a good idea of the area of a regular ship to the Enterprise. They almost look the same size all the time when they're not. And I think it's a scale issue on the show's end, not showing how huge the Enterprise is. So we always think they didn't have all the stuff in there that it does.
Yeah, you're right. They never do really give you a sense of scale for the Enterprise. This would have been a really good opportunity to do that in this episode, since they have all this military stuff. Which, I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
they probably couldn't get an aircraft carrier, but they could have done a model. Like maybe just have it
Hmm.
fly close to one or something, just so you get an idea. It's kind of a really big missed opportunity, because you're right. We have no
Yeah.
clue scale wise how big this thing is.
Yeah. We know because we did research, whatever,
Yeah,
ourselves,
because we
like
looked it up.
offline or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, but like while you're watching the show, whatever, they keep showing all these areas in the ship, but they're not showing how huge the ship is compared to anything else that we can reference. So it's just kind of weird.
Yeah.
So so they says the bowling alley, all stuff. You can name all stuff inside the ship. I'm like, where's it fit at? I don't understand, because it doesn't seem as big as it is.
Right. And we only ever get to see a small piece of it. Usually it's the bridge, the corridor, and somebody's
Yep.
quarters. I think we saw an
Yep.
exercise room once.
Yep. So I think that's one of the big issues.
Yeah. So Kirk calls Scotty to use the tractor beam to hold the jet in place, and Spock says that he thinks the jet might be a little too fragile for that, because he thinks that the jet just will break apart in the tractor beam. But they go ahead and try it anyway, and the jet starts breaking up. So Spock right again, as usual. So Kirk orders the transporter room to try to beam the jet's pilot aboard, and then they do. And when he comes on here, he's like, when he beams in, he's just standing with his back to them. But shouldn't he have been in a seated position, because he was beamed sitting down in the jet?
Yeah, that's one of the weird things. Everybody's always saying that. Nobody's ever beamed like a weird way.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting if we ever see somebody get beamed and they're like floating and or like fall down or something.
Right. I'll
We
do
haven't
that'd be
seen like
hilarious.
yeah, we haven't seen anybody like gravity affecting anybody getting transported yet.
Yeah. And this also shows, because I don't know how fast a jet goes. I know it goes, really fast. But
Hmm.
they can somehow lock onto this guy and beam him up, when they've had issues in the past of locking onto their own people who don't have communicators. And they have that issue again later, not to get too far ahead, but they just lock onto this guy and beam him up while he's flying really, really fast in a jet. And then sometimes they just can't find their own people sitting
Oh,
on a planet, which is really weird.
so it's more of the reference of how accurate the transportation is to you, because sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not, and it's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I know their
understand what you're saying.
communicators also, I pronounce that really weird. I know their communicators also double as a device for them to lock onto to show where the
Yeah.
person is that you're going to be beaming up, which is really useful,
Hmm.
but apparently they don't need that. And just,
Oh, they need that. They didn't have to get him out that ship.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. So Kirk goes to the transporter room and he meets the pilot and welcomes him to the Enterprise. And The pilot introduces himself as Captain John Christopher, and he gives his serial number as, they do in the military when they get captured. And Kirk just tells him to relax and introduces himself. And we get that weird, like the evil or angry face lighting on Kirk here. And I don't understand the context of that.
So yeah, they did it wrong. It was bad lighting, really bad lighting. And also his face just looks weird.
Yeah.
And he's over inviting too early. Plus, I have an issue here. Where is security, bro?
Right. Nobody bothered. He didn't bother to call security to this guy.
You transported him. Maybe he's a Navy SEAL. Maybe he's a badass ninja. I don't know. You just transported him. Why ain't security there with you? You're the cap, bro. That's Captain Kirk by himself in there?
Yeah, he put a lot of faith in this dude and like just not getting attacked by this guy. They just kidnapped out of the air.
I don't even know if the Energizer person's still in there. Whoever the Energizer captain person is does that. I don't know if they're still in there. It's just him and this dude by himself. And you're the captain. You just met him 2 seconds ago.
Yeah.
I'm not. Come on, Kurt. You're smarter than that.
Maybe he's so smart that he knows security is worthless anyway. So he just says, "Fuck it, I'll handle it myself."
Hey, this time they just should have been there.
Like they gave up on security, 10 episodes ago. Like there have been a few times when they needed them and just didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So Kirk apologizes to John Christopher for breaking the jet apart, and he gets a call from Spock that says that the jet is completely broken up. So that's the end of that thing. And Kirk leads John out of the transporter room and through the corridor where it's a really weird scene where a female crew member walks by and says good morning, and John is really, really confused just seeing a woman there, and Kirk explains, oh yeah, she's just part of our crew. And I get that, at this time women weren't allowed in the military, but like he was just so flabbergasted by this. Like it was almost like he'd never seen a woman. Not that he'd never seen a woman in the military, but he's just never seen a woman at all.
Yeah, like if you didn't make a comment like her being hot or something, or she was attractive or something like that, it'd have been different. But
yeah, I thought at first that he was, distracted by the fact that she was good looking, but then Kirk makes the explanation that yeah, she's part of our crew, and I was like, oh, he was just surprised that she was in the military.
Yeah. Very, very. I mean, it's very sexist.
Yeah.
But, it's the 60s, so they can get away with it back then.
Yeah. So they take the elevator to the bridge, and, they make a little bit of small talk about the ship, and Kirk explains that they're a combined military service under the United Earth Space Probe Agency, which I thought they would have had a really cool acronym, but they don't. It's just like WISPA, if you wanted to say it.
He should have said something.
Yeah. Kirk explains that they're from the future, and John takes it really fucking well. He's just like, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. He's like, yeah, I can't deny, that you're here with your ship, which, okay. He doesn't argue at all.
He's accepted a little too fast. Yeah. Like, yo, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, so when am I now? You from what now? Quit lying.
Yeah. He's just completely accepting.
I know I've been transported. Well, that's step one. That's kind of weird. I know I see this ship, that's kind of weird, but he still had to do a little bit more to convince me. But I mean, maybe after the transportation thing on the ship, he just kind of assumed the future is what it was.
Right. Which is, it's really weird. But they reach the bridge as John is saying that he's never believed in little green men, and Spock chimes in when they get there, and he says, well, I don't believe in them either. And this is where John has a problem, is he sees Spock, and he just like freezes, and he just gives him like this weird look. And so Kirk is just like, hey, take a look around the bridge, don't touch anything, and I'm going to go over here and talk to my friend. Which he was so surprised by Spock. Like he's literally just a guy with pointed ears and weird eyebrows. It's not that crazy.
Okay, it's funny you mention that because I wrote something out about the elf ears. I thought about it. Do you ever look at people's ears when you talk to them? And would you even notice if they had pointy ears?
I tend to not pay attention, and I assume most people don't either because my ears have a pretty good point to them. Off to the side, and nobody ever says anything about it, or maybe they're just being polite. Yeah.
So when people see Spock, I kind of had this moment today, clarity. I don't understand their offness about him when he looks so humanoid. Even his eyebrows aren't even that weird. Yeah. It's just his ears, and I don't even look at ears when I talk to people. I've never looked at anybody's ear. That's weird.
The eyebrows are 100% the first thing I would notice. First of all, he's tall. And then I would go, what the fuck
Yeah.
are those eyebrows? And then I would go, that haircut's kind of weird. And then maybe I'd notice his ears.
Yeah, but think about his eyebrows though. He'd be like, oh, chicks wear crazy eyebrows all the time. I'll be like, oh, crazy
Yeah.
eyebrows. I'll let it go. I was still, maybe he has a face deformity. Like I was still not even thinking about alien. Even his weird ears, like, oh, maybe his ears are just weird. Like even though he's just, people look at him in this weird way. I'm like, he doesn't seem that alien to me at all.
No.
Like it's not like he's a different color or nothing like
Right.
that, or like green or blue.
Yeah,
Or
he doesn't
something.
have
It's
tentacles.
Just, yeah. So like the initial reaction when they see him, that thrown off to like you look so weird and so different. I'm like, I don't see what they're seeing.
Right.
So it's one of those things, man.
Hearing you say that, though, I desperately hope that within the next few years, the trend for women is to have Vulcan eyebrows. That would be hilarious.
Oh my god, that would be crazy.
That's got to be the next big trend, right? It's
Yeah.
and haircuts.
You call it the Spocks or something? Like,
Yeah.
you got Spock. Hey, look at the Spocks.
Get your Spock on, girl.
Get your Spock on, girl. Who's Spock? I don't know.
She's like, logically.
Said, who's Spock? I don't know who
Yeah,
Spock is.
I don't fucking know.
No. My boyfriend said something about it. Oh my god, the Spock.
Yeah, so
Oh, the Spock.
Kirk and Spock, they go off to the side, have a little conversation about how they've achieved stable orbit, and the deflector shields are now working, which should stop them from being picked up as a UFO again. So I guess that blocks them from being seen on a pretty primitive, by comparison, radar.
I'm assuming.
Yeah, and Spock says that Scotty wants to talk to him about the engines. So Spock just wants to talk about John here for a second, and so they go even further to the other side of the room. And Spock says that they can't return John back to Earth because he already knows too much about them, and that he's learning a lot more, as they speak. So he worries that if a person learned about the future, that they could use that to their advantage somehow, like changing things like stocks or even other nations, and changing the course of the future, which could stop them from ever existing, which is a pretty legitimate.
It is so Spock. When Spock said that, I thought, oh, thank you, Spock, because I was thinking it already. Because I know when things going on about Spock said, I'm like, it all makes sense. Listen to Spock this time,
right?
Like, don't even question him.
But that shows that they also believe in the one single timeline time travel theory, and not the branching one where them going back in time didn't alter the other one. It just made a branch and started a whole new one.
Branch.
Yeah, so they subscribe to the single timeline theory.
Well, and then I wonder, when did the multi-timeline theory even start in the first place? Like, was it something that referenced in a book or back in the days or recently? I don't really know how that really goes. I'm just curious about when certain things popped up.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about when the branching timeline thing popped up.
Yeah, I'm curious.
So Kirk gets a little pissy and tells Spock that his logic can be annoying, and he offers John a change of clothes to get him out of the flight suit that he's in, saying that he wants to meet him and Spock in his quarters after he gets changed. So a little later, Kirk starts recording a captain's log as John and Spock enter the room. And we get a really weird scene where the computer acknowledges Kirk's log recording and says, "Computer recorded, dear." Like it's like this kind of sultry voice.
Yeah, it's definitely a little suspect.
Yeah, and Kirk tells the computer not to address him in that manner, and the computer says, "Computed, dear." At this point, I was really fucking confused because this episode started off pretty seriously, and was set to go that route, and then they throw this in, and it was just so
awkward.
Yeah, it was out of place. I felt like.
Like they could have made it like a basic robot voice that was just so like blah, 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 it's like, oh, it's not working right now. It's going to the basic primitive version or something instead of what they did.
Yeah.
So a lot of sexist thing going on, man.
Yeah.
1960s, they can go with a lot of crap.
So Spock says that in order to correct the ship's computer, it's going to require an overhaul of the entire computer system, taking at least 3 weeks at a starbase. And Kirk says that he wouldn't mind it too much if it wasn't so affectionate. And Spock says that it also has an unfortunate tendency to giggle. It's just a really weird problem that they're having.
I'm telling you, bro. It's just the hidden underneath it, bro. You can't say that nowadays.
But
you can't say that.
John Christopher laughs at this, and he asks if a female computer is normal. And Spock explains that they went to a place called Signet 14 for repairs and maintenance, but the planet is dominated by women, and the women felt that the computer lacked a personality, so they gave it one, and that's just the one that they gave it. Why didn't we get that adventure?
Yeah. I put in quotations, Signet 14, planet for me. Wow, look at that.
Just all women.
It's dominated by women? I'm here, ladies. I'm here for you. Oh man, I don't know what's going on there, but I do know that that's where I want to be. Apparently, they have the best parties.
Yeah.
That's what I heard. That's what I heard. They had the best parties over at CD14.
Yeah. So John laughs at that, and he says that they have some pretty interesting problems and that he'd love to stay around to see how it works, but, he can't. He's got to go home. But Kirk tells him that he's going to have to stick around because they can't send him back to Earth. And he goes on to explain why they can't send him back. And so John argues that his disappearance would also change something, which is a really fair point.
Which is, I never thought about it until you said it.
Yeah, like obviously plucking this guy out of the timeline is also going to change the timeline.
Yeah, but I think he said something about his significance or whatever.
Yeah, Spock says that he's checked all the historical tapes and they show no relevant contribution by John Christopher. And I was like, damn, you're just fucking telling him he's worthless right there. Dude, he's like, you don't never do anything important with your life. Who fucking cares?
Spock was like, yeah, nothing. Well, I had a small issue here. Why did they give him a captain uniform?
Okay, so another thing that's in the trivia that I had pulled out. His tunic that he's given is of a full lieutenant, which is the naval equivalent of his Air Force captain rank. So you're asking some good questions that have been answered in the trivia. So they basically give him a shirt that it gives him his Air Force rank.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Okay, I can accept it now. I just didn't know why it was an outfit. I thought they could have just put some regular clothes on him or something.
Yeah, Kirk seems to just respect him as a member of the military, like basically brothers in arms kind of thing.
Yeah, really fast though. Like, Kurt's normally a little more cautious than this.
Yeah.
Like he's let him tour the bridge, let him walk around without security, all these things or whatever. And unfortunately, to me personally, that just seems like that's not something Kurt would do.
Yeah. And it's just asking for something to happen, especially after they tell him that he's worthless and that he can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So John starts to argue, because obviously he was just told he never does anything relevant in his life. And he says that it's his job to report what he's seen. And he asks Kirk, what would you do in that situation? So Kirk says that he would report it if he could, but that they can't take the risk. John says that he has a wife and 2 children, and Kirk just apologizes. He said, hey, I'm sorry, but we still can't send you. And they get interrupted by Scotty, who calls to say that they can re-energize in about 4 hours and have their engines ready to go. But even if the engines are repaired, they have nowhere to go. So that's another problem to throw on. Because I to this point, I didn't even think about that. Like, they're getting everything ready to go. Where the fuck are they going to go?
Yeah, like what? And then what happens if they're stuck?
Right.
Yeah, I just don't know where would you go? Have you go to a new planet? Start a new planet with the 400 people on the ship? I'm supposing?
Well, I thought, and not to get ahead of ourselves again, but I thought that this is where they were going to use the time travel trick that they learned in the Naked Time. Because they learned how to travel, backwards in time. So I'd assume that they could work out how to travel forwards in time, and that was going to be how they got home, but they didn't end up doing that.
Yeah. I remember that now that you mentioned it. But was that a small jump or was that a big jump?
They made a pretty small jump, but I feel like they could have figured it out, especially knowing how they figured this one out.
Yeah.
So after Scotty calls and tells them that they have nowhere to go, John tells them that, hey, you guys are just as much a prisoner in time as I am. And then we go to a commercial break. And we come back to another captain's log, just, Kirk explaining the situation. And Kirk is talking to the computer, who continues to call him dear, and he still doesn't like it. And he makes a maintenance note to the computer saying that the recording computer has a malfunction and should be either corrected or scrapped. And he tells it to compute the note, and the computer's all sad, and it's like, computed, like in a kind of crying sad tone.
Dude, this is such a messed up episode.
Honestly, keep that computer. Like, that's pretty solid.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So Spock then calls Kirk to tell him that he needs to see him and John immediately. And Kirk calls John, but John doesn't answer. So Kirk is like, shit, something's happening. And he calls security to have them go look for him. And I was like, security ain't going to find shit. Like, we already know that.
Security is useless.
Yeah, we already know that.
In the show, we know that, yeah.
And we find that out immediately because John is going through some corridors and he just knocks out a security guard and takes his phaser. So security's still fucking worthless.
Dude, the security's terrible, man. I just don't get it.
Yeah, there's two things that we can say about pretty much every episode. Spock is always right. Security is always worthless.
I mean, these are guys that train all day, every day, and they seem to be trash at their job.
Right.
Oh, look, let's look the other way before we go around the corner, you know that. So guys, I played a show while we were talking. Okay, let you know right now. I didn't watch the security thing again. He looked one way while walking around the corner the opposite way. Oh my gosh, the way these guys move,
Dude,
it
that
drives
has
me
been their
crazy.
weakness the entire series. They only ever check one way. Every single
Yeah,
time. They only
every
look one
time.
direction.
Yeah, they don't look both ways at all.
So John gets the phaser and he goes to the transporter room and tells the engineer to transport him back to Earth. But Kirk shows up behind him and just pretty effortlessly knocks him out.
Gives it 1-2.
Yep, gives the old at least Kirk can fight if the security can't. So we go to the sick bay where McCoy is monitoring the knocked out John Christopher, and he tells Kirk that John's going to be up pretty soon. And Kirk and McCoy go and have a little discussion about how they can't send John back, but they also can't get back to the future. And Bones says that after their supplies run out, they're going to have to go back to Earth because there are 430 of them, and that's 430 chances of altering the future, which is a very solid point. When they run out of supplies, they can't just land somewhere and
Yeah.
not, interact with people in the timeline.
Well, when it comes to that though, I didn't get why they didn't just leave the atmosphere yet. Like I don't I'm forgetting why they weren't
They were
when they
still
were
working
back.
on their engines at this point.
Okay.
Yeah. They had enough to get escape velocity, but really couldn't do too much after that. So they're just kind of re-energizing and repairing their engines until they figure out what to do. Or I guess while they figure out what to do.
But I assume with other Stargate records, I'm sorry, with other star map records with planets, I assume they know a planet that's inhabited that's Earth-like somewhere out there, 'cause all the places they've been, and I assume they would just take the ship, go there, and then do whatever.
But did
I'm
that stuff
guessing.
exist in 1969 though? Because you got to remember they're several hundred years in the future is where they come from. So those things may
Yeah.
not have existed at that time. Which I also wonder if them traveling backwards in time, what if that was what was supposed to happen? What if that always happened and they were supposed to go down there and meddle with stuff because that's just how it worked out the first time, you know?
Yeah, that's one of the things about time and time
Yeah,
travelers.
you
We
can
don't
never
know.
know if you're doing the right thing.
Oh, not at all.
So while they're having this discussion, John wakes up as Kirk is telling Bones that even if they took him back, that he'd be useless to their society, meaning he's not, well, okay, Spock already clarified he's useless on Earth, but even if they go back to their own time, that he'd be useless
He's even
there.
worse. He's even worse there.
Yeah, so fucked up. Like, this poor guy. It's just, you're useless in your time, you're useless in our time. Like, what the fuck do you do? So McCoy suggests that maybe John could be retrained or re-educated, which I think is fair because he's obviously a fighter pilot and not everybody is cut out to do that. So he obviously has some skill and you have to be fairly intelligent to do that. So obviously, he could,
Yeah.
I bet he could be retrained for their time. But Kirk is like, well, could he be trained to forget his family and forget his kids? And so John chimes in at this point and he's like, the answer to that is no. Spock enters the room at this point and says that he has made an error in his computation. And McCoy makes a joke. He's like, well, this is a historical event. Like, mark this one on the calendar. Spock's wrong. I'm starting to wonder if they actually, I know they have this weird friendship, but at this point, I'm wondering if they've actually just turned to hating each other.
No, they like each other. So I feel like everything's done at their friendship is just great. Like Kurt, like I don't know what it is about Bones and Spock, but like I can watch a show with just them two.
Yeah.
Like a whole episode, just episode to episode with just them two quipping back and forth whole episode. I would be laughing because every time they do something, they make me smile a lot.
Yeah, it's a really good dynamic that they have. Those two are great together, but I also think that Kirk is great because Spock is, he's the overly logical guy. McCoy is the overly human guy, and Kirk is a really good mixture of the two who just needs a little bit of advice every now and then.
I like that. That's smart. That's a smart way to describe it.
So Spock goes on to say that they have to return John to Earth, and John's like, well, why if I make no relevant contributions? And Spock says that he forgot to check for possible contributions by offspring, and he finds that John's son is going to head the first successful Earth-Saturn probe. And John's like, well, I don't have a son. So Kirk is convinced that they need to send him back so that he can eventually have a son to lead this thing. And John at this point is just super happy about the thought of having a son. So he's not even really paying attention. He's just like, I have a son.
Well, he has two daughters.
Yeah.
They had two kids. So unless he was lying in the first place to try to, I got two kids. Like,
right.
Come on, man, you got to send me back. Like,
Well,
we're not sure about that part, but
apparently, just like him, his two daughters are useless and they do nothing for society. So,
society, just the son.
yep.
Of course, the man does it all. Thank
No,
you.
no. Okay, we're canceled now. It's nice knowing you, everybody. All like 20 people that hear this.
Oh man.
So, a little bit later in a meeting room, they're talking about how to explain John's reappearance on Earth after his plane crashed in an open section of southern Nebraska. Because can you imagine you're part of the search party and you've looked everywhere and then suddenly he's just there? It's like behind a bush. Like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we checked that before, but
Yeah, whatever.
yeah. So they note that you know there are going to be search parties everywhere in the area, and John says that he also got some pretty clear pictures of the Enterprise, and his command is going to be processing those fairly quickly. So Kirk says that if he remembers his history, things like that were explained by stuff like weather balloons. So Spock reminds him that their tractor beam crushed a U.S. Air Force plane, and it's going to be impossible to explain that as anything other than a UFO. So I think there he is actually just talking about aliens.
Yeah, I'm just curious about how to explain I'm trying to think how to word this right. About Kurt's knowledge of the 1960s.
He is just a history buff, apparently.
Yeah, but I find that kind of odd. Yeah, because like that's like 200 years, I believe, if we were in the show, like 20 years. I don't know about what's 20 years ago for us. 19, let's see, 17. I don't know a lot about the 1900s.
Right.
And I mean, I know a little about the early 1900s, like little small things here and there, but he seems to know a lot about history.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if he was a history buff or what.
Yeah, maybe he just did a shit ton of reading, like between scenes.
Yeah, like if they had to go to a computer and the computer spit out information, I might feel like a little bit different by it. But if
Right.
he just knows everything, it just makes Kurt seem like Spock-like with his knowledge, which is I find not really one of Kurt's big virtues. So it's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah, I would have expected this kind of thing from Spock. So Kirk asks if anybody else has any idea about how to get back to their own time, and Spock says that in theory they can reverse what happened to them in the first place using the same means. And Kirk wants to go get the pictures and the radio transmissions so that John just seems like another person that saw a UFO. They're like, we're going to go back and steal every evidence of what you had and make you just seem like a crazy fuck who saw an alien ship.
With just so mean but funny.
Yeah.
But do what you gotta do, sir.
Yeah, so John wants to go with them, but of course Kirk denies him and says that he doesn't want to risk John's health and his life. And so John then offers to sketch a layout of the base. So we actually cut to the base, and we have Kirk and Sulu beaming down into a hallway, which I was like, fuck yeah, more Sulu time. Because Sulu's really one of my favorite characters of this series. Everything he gets to do, like he's always super solid.
My thing is, when they transported him, do they know there's a body there or not? Are people around or not? Because that's a lucky transport.
Right, I was thinking
Like
the same thing.
The guy just walked past there. They transported immediately. Like, do they have they can scan who's in that area? Didn't scan somebody there, or they go transport somebody in the middle of the dining room? Well, like talking about 100 people.
Yeah,
Like, I don't.
And again, not to jump too far ahead, but later on they can't find Kirk because reasons, I guess. So if they couldn't find him, then they obviously wouldn't have been able to figure out where everybody is, right? But they've also used the ship system to scan an entire planet to find two people in a desert portion of it. So I don't know. That's a huge risk to just beam somebody down. What if they beam him down inside of the guy that's walking by? Like, what if they...
Yeah, I don't understand how it works. I'm just
just like beam him down into a wall. Like, that's terrifying.
The one thing in this whole episode I thought was super cool was this lock pick that he just uses and picks a lock with this little thing. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Like that's just simple enough.
Yeah, so they're in the hallway, they look around and find this statistical services room, and they unlock the door using that really weird device that just emits a high-pitched frequency and somehow opens up the lock. So they go into the room and they find what they say is a primitive computer, and they just go to work on it. And we cut back to the Enterprise where McCoy is pacing the transporter room asking Spock how long Kirk and Sulu have been gone, and Spock is kind of sarcastic and he says that sneaking takes more time than a direct approach. So McCoy gets a little bit annoyed and asks Spock, he's like, well, shouldn't you be working on your time warp calculations instead? And Spock is like, well, I am. And then we get this just like really weird close-up of Spock and like some goofy music. I don't know. It's just a weird. Yeah, it's just a really weird thing.
It's weird, awkward, and I think it's supposed to say that Spock is doing multitasking, doing
Yeah,
more than one
he's
thing
doing
at
all
the
this
same
advanced
time.
shit in his head,
But
but
it's the way they did it and the weird music they used didn't make it uh very notice about what you were supposed to be smiling about.
right. So we go back to the airbase, and Kirk and Sulu are caught by a guard while they're disassembling this computer. And the computer is just, it's what you think an old computer looks like. It's just a big machine with like big movie looking reels in it, just recording stuff or going over stuff. And it's funny
Yeah,
to think that actually our cell phones are many hundreds times more powerful than those things are or were, which that's crazy to think about.
which is yep. Pick up the phone.
Like, I'm
You do
pretty sure
everything
my
nowadays.
computer keyboard is more advanced than that thing was.
Oh, probably.
Yeah, so the guard walks in and catches them and holds them at gunpoint and demands their belts and that has their phasers on them. And he takes the bag that they had put the computer recordings in. And then we go back to the Enterprise again. So a lot of back and forth, and McCoy is still super worried about how much time has passed. And Spock this time is like, yeah, I agree. It's been a little bit too long. And they try to contact Kirk. So Kirk's communicator starts beeping, and the guard that took it wants to know what that device is. So they play dumb, and Kirk's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't hear any noise, which was really weird.
Dude, this episode is full of awkward moments. Awkward. That's awkward too.
Yeah. So the guard then opens the communicator, and they hear an emergency signal. And I'm really confused about this because why would they be broadcasting an emergency signal to the person they're trying to get a hold of? Did the guard accidentally activate the emergency signal? Is that what happened? They weren't very clear about it.
You're not very clear about a lot of things in this episode.
Yeah, I can imagine Spock's like, let's give him a call, and then he calls him and just fucking beeps at him. Like, that doesn't make any sense. You would think the person with the communicator would be the one to send the
Yeah.
emergency signal.
And then they transport him, right? And more awkwardness.
Yeah.
They transport him. He's looking backwards, just like the last dude was doing. But he just, or sideways, they kind of just stands there.
Yeah, he's like frozen.
He don't move. It's almost like he's frozen, but he's not really frozen, but he's just frozen in shock.
Right.
Which is just awkward.
Yeah.
No scream, no reaction. Just, I'm so shocked I'm frozen. I ain't moving. Like, oh, you don't see me here? You're in the military, bro, with a gun in your hand. Why don't you point at somebody yelling at somebody? Like, yo, where the hell am I? Blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just what his whole reaction was just so weird.
And the only reaction in that room is Spock raising an eyebrow. Nobody pulls a phaser. Nobody says anything.
Yeah.
Spock just raises.
Yeah.
Which, okay, Nimoy's eyebrow raises are fucking amazing for starters.
Yeah.
But that's the only reaction that they got, was just him raising an eyebrow.
Yeah, like, he has a gun in his hand. You're not worried about nothing?
Right. Yeah, he could just turn around and start blasting.
Yep, exactly.
I'm surprised Sulu didn't see that gun and be like, oh, that's, just tell exactly what model it was. He must have add that one to his collection.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I got one of those in my collection.
So Spock approaches the guard on the transporter and raises the eyebrow to him, and Kirk calls the Enterprise using Sulu's communicator to let him know that everything's fine. And yeah, this is where I had the note that the guard is just standing still on the transporter, just making a really weird face. And then I thought that there's a lot of weird comedy for this episode. It can't decide if it wants to be serious or funny.
That's the awkwardness of it, though.
Yeah,
It's awkwardness of the episode. It's like it missed the balance.
Yes.
There has to be a balance. They went to extreme serious and extreme comedy, up and down. But that's not what you're supposed to do. It's got to be middle ground, a good balance, so it's entertaining while you're doing it.
Right.
Not awkward.
Yeah, exactly. So we go to a commercial break, come back, and Spock is giving a captain's log, just explains the situation with the guard. And on the base, Kirk is talking to Spock about the guard, who is still frozen with fear, as McCoy takes his gun and the communicator away from him. He's still just holding that pose.
Apparently, I wrote a note down. I forgot to mention it a minute ago. I want to say something real quick. Okay, so they go to this planet, right? Do they not study the clothing there?
Yeah.
And then they have things that make clothes. Can they just make the kind of clothes these guys wear when you go to the planet so you don't stick out like a sore thumb? Is that weird to me?
But
thinking like that?
Do they have the ability to make clothes in this series?
They can make food.
Yeah.
Make food.
Yeah, we get that. Yep.
Yeah, food is more complex than clothing.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly how it works, but I'm just curious that I haven't seen yet in this show that they make clothes. And so maybe they can't make clothes. I don't know. But I would think that a spaceship that travels the Earth or universe, going to different planets will have a machine that make clothing. So when they go to each planet, they can follow whatever customs and be able to fit in. So they can make first contact, things like that. Things I think that would happen. It's weird that they can't make clothes.
Yeah, that they decide to go on this sneaking mission in their bright military uniforms is
Well,
really weird. Yeah,
not the sneaking mission, any mission so far
yeah,
in the
yeah.
show.
They haven't changed at all.
Yeah, which is it popped in my head when I was watching this. I thought, yo, they don't have disguises on. I thought, oh, they never wear anything but what they wear, and I wonder why they don't have something that makes clothing and things so they can fit in better to be able to do things like particularly this right here. If they were wearing army clothing, they could have made it much easier for themselves to
Right.
make this way easier.
Even in the Squire of Gothos, when they were going to a planet that had a toxic atmosphere and a shit ton of volcanic and tornadic activity, they still just went down in their uniform, but with like a
Well,
breathing device. So,
yeah. So
yeah,
like it just doesn't. I don't know.
yeah,
It don't make any sense.
yeah. So they continue, and Kirk and Sulu continue to remove the computer tapes, and then they exit the room. And they sneak into a photo developing room and enter the dark room to look for the pictures. And I was like, how the fuck does Kirk know what a dark room is? I can't imagine he does much, analog photography on the Enterprise. I imagine everything
Yeah.
they have is digital, but he knows because he knows everything. And they trigger a silent alarm, prompting some guards to head towards their position. They find the photos and the footage that they were looking for just as the guards are entering the room. So Kirk decides to take one to the team, and he exits the dark room and closes the door to protect Sulu while Sulu decides to get beamed up to the Enterprise. And
And I
Kirk,
like to say, and proceeds to beat the brakes off of
yeah,
three dudes, dude.
beats the
He
shit
beats
out of
the
these
brakes off
guys.
these dudes. Oh my God, Kurt's a beast. The
Yeah.
whole time I was like, oh, it's like Kurt or John Wick. I don't know. But
Yeah.
he was, he was beating these dudes.
He even got a little fancy and exited the room and jumped up and grabbed the
Yep.
door frame to dodge one of them. Like, he's just in there having a
I,
ball.
I thought he was gonna grab it and kick him.
Yeah.
When he jumped in, I thought he was gonna grab it and kick him. I said, "Yo, are you kidding me?" Like he just jumped in and jumped. I mean, this whole scene, this scene almost makes this whole show worth it
Yeah.
because that whole like 1 minute scene, 2 minute scene is so entertaining
Yeah.
that I'm like, this is what Star Trek is, and it's what it should be, and this is so fun and amazing. I wish most episodes was more like this.
Yeah, that was
Like
pretty
this,
solid.
yeah, I just
And
I
not
mean,
one of
just
those guys pulled a gun and just shot him. They all take that beating like champs.
yeah, until the end, oh, he puts the gun at the end. I'm like, oh, okay, well, you have to go the whole time. It is what it is. But I mean,
Yeah.
I guess you want to go toe to toe. It was just entertaining. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, so he does eventually get overrun because 3-on-1, you're gonna just get outnumbered. You're outnumbered. You're gonna get messed up. So they catch him and they
Yeah.
arrest him. And the base's colonel has questions about where the other person is that they saw, and Kirk says, "No, that was just me." And do you think that anybody could have left that room and you wouldn't have noticed? And the guy's just like, that's a fair point. Maybe I am crazy and there's just one of you. So on the Enterprise, Scotty calls Spock to tell him that they can fire the engines up at any time, and Spock then tells him, all right, go ahead and do it now, and we'll prepare to test our theory later. And Spock notes that for some reason he's just looking at the photographs and everything that Sulu brought back, and he's like, this is really poor photography. Like, you fucking photography snob. He's like, the angles are all wrong. Composition's not great. And McCoy gets pissed off. He gets really mad, and he reminds Spock that Kirk is down there alone on the base and he's probably been arrested. And Spock says that he's aware of that, and he calls John Christopher into the briefing room. So back on the base, Kirk is being questioned about how he got onto the base by the colonel. He's just like, hey, how the fuck did you get in here? And Kirk says, well, I just popped in out of thin air, which is not technically a lie, I guess. So
Yeah.
the colonel picks up the lockpick device that Kirk was carrying, and Kirk is like, hey, be really careful with that. That could kill everybody here. It's a crazy device. And they just continue the interrogation, and Kirk keeps giving like sarcastic answers to everything the colonel wants to know. And then the colonel threatens to lock him up for 200 years, and Kirk is like, oh yeah, that'd be about right. And I was just like, man, sarcastic Kirk is fucking weird. Like, I don't like this.
This whole scene was awkward for two reasons. First of all, okay, I watch a lot of cop shows. Why is he a military? Why is he not in handcuffs?
Right.
We just call him all this crap. Why is he not in handcuffs? And he's out in the he's in the office instead of interrogation room.
Yeah.
That's like 1 and 2. this whole scene don't work for me.
Yeah,
I'm
especially
and
after he kicked the asses of 3 of your dudes, you're just gonna let him sit in the
thank
chair
you.
casually.
Yeah, I don't like. I think for the 1960s or whatever, this coming out after like Japanese internment camps and things that in our history. Like this is very mundane for the thing I'm doing. Somebody who would break into a military base.
Right.
You think it, I assume he'd be chained up somewhere and he'd be beating the crap out of him. Like, yo, who are you?
Right.
like, like if that happened, I'd be like, yo, okay, I get this now. But it just they seem super overly friendly instead of the this guy. First of all, we're being invaded. Is he from a different country? We don't know. Is he a spy? All this stuff that they could have went to, and I feel like they just let it go. And
Yeah.
I
And did
found it
you
very
notice
awkward.
that even after the fight, they apparently let him fix his hair because his hair got all messed up in the fight, and then when they're doing the interrogation, it's all perfect Kirk hair again.
I didn't notice
Yeah,
that.
they're on their way to the office, and they're like, "Hey, you want to step into that restroom, maybe fix your hair?" And he's like, "Yeah, thanks."
Yeah.
So back on the Enterprise, John is telling Spock and the others about what is likely happening to Kirk, and he says that he's not going to help them unless he can go with them to rescue him. And they initially refuse that, but Spock then relents and decides to go down to the base with Sulu and John. And Spock says that he tells Sulu to get some phasers and set him to heavy stun just for, Sulu and Spock. And John's like, "What, you don't trust me?" And Spock says that he does, but only to a certain point, which is really fair. Like, somebody should be a little wary about this guy that they just
Yeah.
fucking kidnapped out of the sky. They beam down to the transporter room, and the guard that they had beamed up is just watching in the transporter room. And this is where the engineer offers the guard some food, and the guard's like, "Yeah, I want some chicken soup." So the engineer pulls a little card out and puts it into a slot on the wall, and a door opens up, and there's chicken soup in there. And
Which is awesome.
it is amazing, but then I'm like, why the fuck do they keep eating colored shapes if they have this? Like, they're just eating these terrible looking, almost wooden looking blocks.
The food cubes.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the few cube, maybe the taste of it's different. Like maybe if you eat one, it would taste like a real grape or something.
Maybe they
But it's
just
like a
really
full
like
meal.
them. Maybe they taste amazing. I guess I hadn't considered that, but they just look really fucking bland.
Yeah, they look like they taste really good, and then they give you a whole meal at one time. So you got other stuff you got going on. Because honestly, one thing about us, think about it, the idea of eating is enjoyment.
Yeah.
You enjoy the act of eating. Like they don't, they just throw the eat whatever to and keep moving on. You don't see them really enjoy themselves. The
Yeah, it's more
idea
because
of
they
eating
have to.
itself. It's more because they have to, and they got to keep going. They got other stuff going on.
Dude, I'd be eating so much of like the perfect steak if I had this technology. I would just everything that I would probably gain so much weight. Just so much great food.
oh, that's random. Random thought. Imagine a world that you can have a complete meal in a pill, like like that'd be your whole meal, like it'd be like the whole steak, all the energy you got, everything you need for the meal at a time, popping pills and move on, and give
I
you everything you
I
need
would
for.
miss tasting food though. If the pill could give you the
I,
taste, then I'd be down for it. Because sometimes eating is just a hassle because of the time involved in prep and everything. But I would miss the taste of good food.
or you might miss the idea of eating itself, like actually putting the food on the thing and eating it. Like
Right.
it's the initial first take. Yeah, see, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Random thought.
Yeah. So back at the base, Spock and Sulu and John manage to knock out a guard, and then they get to where Kirk is being held, and Spock knocks out one guard with his Vulcan techniques, while Kirk takes out the Colonel. And Spock, he goes up and he asks Kirk, and he's like, "Hey, don't you find that painful, like just punching people instead of doing the nerve pinch stuff?" And Kirk's just like, "Yeah, I do," and that's it. So he,
Yeah,
he enjoys it,
as,
he clearly loves it.
as he's rubbing his hand.
Yeah. He's like, "Yeah, that shit hurts, but I actually really like it." Which, why doesn't Spock teach him some Vulcan stuff?
I don't know if we could do that. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. So Spock then goes to explore another room, and John actually takes a gun from the guard that they knocked out while everybody else is busy because Kirk and Sulu are getting ready to beam up. So when Kirk calls for them to get beamed up, John points a gun at him. He's like, "No, I'm not going anywhere." And then we get a commercial and we come back where Kirk is trying to persuade John to, not point a gun at him. And John's just like, "Yeah, I'm not going with you guys." And he yells for Spock to come out of the back room where he went into, but Spock then shows up behind him and knocks him out with a nerve pinch. So I think it's implied here that maybe Spock got beamed up and then beamed back down behind him, maybe? Because I don't think there was another way out of that room. The room he went into was almost like a closet.
I don't know. I guess that's what implied. I thought that maybe Spock just found a way and snuck behind him,
Yeah.
like because he thought logically that this was a likely position to be in.
And I don't remember hearing the transporter sound, but I'd have to go back and see if they snuck
I
it
don't
in there
remember.
somewhere.
Yeah, I don't remember him either.
Yeah. So they beam back up to the Enterprise, and Kirk gives a captain's log explaining their need to get back to their own time. And then they're in a meeting room where they discuss the theory of how they're going to get back to their own time. And Spock explains to John that as they perform their slingshot maneuver, then they'll have to start by going backwards in time to before they got there, and then they can slingshot forward to their own time. But when they do manage to break free and shoot forward in time, John and the guard will be transported to before any of those events ever happened. So I guess their plan is, they have to back up even more time, and then basically like a rubber band, when you pull the rubber band backwards, then when it shoots forward, they're going to have to pass this time again, and that's when they're going to drop these guys off.
I don't understand that theory itself. I mean, I'm going with their. It's a theory they're using, so I'm going with it. I just found it awkward.
It's weird.
It's like everything else.
Yeah, it's weird. I've never heard that one be used again. I don't know if any other media, or like movies or anything, have used that slingshot through time technique again, but I've not heard of it.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, so Kirk says that John and the guard aren't going to have to remember anything that happens, because when they get dropped off, then what's going on now will not have happened. So again, the single timeline theory, which if they were branching, then it would be a much bigger problem. But nope, single timeline. So Scotty is worried about how much braking control they're going to have when they do shoot forward, and says that if they stop too late, then they could pass their own time, or they may stop too soon and get torn apart. And they decide to just go ahead and try it anyway, and they start prepping for that maneuver. On the bridge, they start their slingshot maneuver as John talks about how he wanted to go to space, but he didn't qualify for the program, and Kirk tells him to take a good look around because he made it there ahead of everyone else. And that's actually, I think that's a pretty amazing addition, because he's experiencing something that no one in his time has experienced yet, because the moon landing hasn't happened. Well, I mean, they put people in orbit or anything, but he is definitely far beyond orbit. But the thing that sucks is that he will not remember any of this.
Which kind of sucked too.
Yeah, kind of a bittersweet thing. And what I like is that they give us a few shots of him just really enjoying it, just like soaking it all in. Like, this is fucking amazing. I can't believe this is happening. So, I don't feel terrible for him, but it does suck. But as the Enterprise approaches the sun, their speed increases, and they actually start going faster than Warp 8. And Spock notes that the chronometer is moving backwards. And Kirk tells John, hey, we're almost to your time, so you need to get your gear and go to the transporter to get ready. He makes a joke about something like, you've only got 20 years or some shit, I don't remember the time, to get ready. So they approach their breakaway point, and Spock starts their countdown, and Kirk orders Sulu to begin the slingshot maneuver, and the ship just starts like lurching around as the lights start to go out.
Let's pause there for a second. So the same transporters that have a hard time locking onto your communicator, not time locking onto all these things going on, now can beam you at warp exponentially 910 while moving in the right timeline.
Through time, not just moving in the right time, moving through time.
Through time, yeah. It's like, these transporters are amazingly awful when they don't need to be. It's so perplexed.
Yeah.
The whole idea of it is just, I don't even know.
It's weird that they've been used as a plot device quite a few times with how restrictive they are, and now suddenly they can just do everything because the plot says so.
They do it randomly. Like randomly, it's like, oh, we can't get through the shielding. The shielding is a big deal. Next thing we know, they go through shielding.
Yeah.
So it's like they can't figure out how good a transporter, how good it is,
right?
How strong it is. It just up and down. It's starting to become very noticeable now.
Yeah, and that probably heavily depends on who's writing the episodes and directing them at this point.
Yeah.
So they start their slingshot maneuver, and the ship's lurching around, and the lights go out, and then they go to full power and slingshot around the sun, and they start going faster than their ship can show now. So they're going so fast that their speedometer is basically maxed out, and the chronometer starts counting forward, so they're moving forward through time again. Kirk calls the transporter room to make sure that John is ready to go, and they exchange some goodbyes and get ready to transport John and the guard. They don't really mention him, but yeah, that other guy too. He's got to go home as well.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the second guy.
yeah, so did they apparently. So when the right time approaches, they transport John and the guard back to the point where they first saw the Enterprise. Well, John gets to go back there, and then the guard, goes back to his time. And when John goes back, he reports to the base. It's where he's in the airplane, and he was tracking the Enterprise, and he reports that he lost whatever he was tracking, and then they just report it as just another UFO. So the whole thing never really happened. And then on the Enterprise, they send the guard back to Earth just before he catches Sulu and Kirk taking the computer records. So he opens up the door to the computer room, and instead of seeing them there's just nobody there. So he's just like, all right, sweet, and he just leaves. The Enterprise continues their journey back to their own time, and they start to apply their brakes. And Scotty warns that the pulling away from the sun weakened their brakes and that they might blow apart if they reverse. But Kirk's like, fuck it, I don't care. We're going to go ahead and do it anyway. And they just go ahead and do it anyway. And the ship starts to shake a little bit, and then suddenly it starts shaking really, really violently. It just throws everybody on the ground, which I really liked this scene. It's so weird seeing, not weird, it's satisfying seeing everybody moving, pretending to fall in the same direction. Like everybody's just, like it's very coordinated, and for some reason to me, it's very satisfying knowing that they're not just moving this whole stage around.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, so Scotty calls the bridge to warn them about the engines buckling. And it's such a weird thing because he calls the bridge and he doesn't get an answer, and then he yells for them again and he doesn't get an answer again, and then the ship just corrects itself and everything's fine. And Kirk is like, oh yeah, we must still have Scotty down there. But I thought that something crazy, like something was going to maybe blow up or something, and maybe we were going to lose Scotty. But they started building towards something that just never happened in that moment. Yeah. It was really, really weird.
Kind of waste of a time.
Yeah. So they get a call from Starfleet Control, asking them to record their arrival, and Kirk records their arrival, and the ship calls him dear again, and then Kirk just, he smiles, and that's the end of it. It was really, really kind of anticlimactic.
I think the end when the whole they added the end of them worrying about blowing up when they're stopping for no reason.
Yeah, it was really weird.
Because they could have been like, oh yeah, our engines are weak. It's going to be when we slow, when we stop, it's going to be jarring, or it's going to have been bad or something. But they made it, they built it up to something, and it was nothing.
Yeah, everything gets really dramatic, and there's all this dramatic tension, and then Scotty starts like yelling. He's like, guys, like shit is going wrong. Like something's really bad is about to happen, and then they just drop it. It was, I don't know if they cut something, or just decided maybe they did fucking kill him off to begin with, and then they were like, no, we actually need that guy, and they decided not to use it. I don't know, but yeah, it was a really weird one.
Yeah.
I did enjoy this episode. I really like seeing again. For some reason I love Sulu. He's good at everything, and he doesn't complain. He rarely does anything wrong, and when he does, it's like not his fault. He's on some either he's had a crazy virus infect him, or he's on a weird planet that he doesn't know that is making his wildest dreams come true, which is just holding or shooting a gun apparently. But again, and we talked about this before, he and Spock go on this mission and they still don't interact with each other. They have no dialogue aside from Spock telling Sulu to get the phasers ready. That is it. They do this entire sneaking rescue mission and they still don't interact with each other. And it's so fucking weird.
You know what? I didn't think about that until you said it again.
Yeah, it's so weird. They're hanging out and they're just not talking. And the other thing that I thought about this was like the comedy was really weird. Kirk's sarcasm was off. The entire episode felt off, and I feel like it was missing something. I don't know what it could have been missing, but I just feel like it was missing something. I feel like if you had removed the weird sarcasm and the comedy, you would have a very serious episode that I would have enjoyed more. And that's not to say that I didn't like this, but I think that sticking to the seriousness would have been the right play. I think the comedy stuff was unnecessary and actually kind of detracted from the episode. But I don't know. Overall, I liked it. We also have 2 methods of time travel now, so we better fucking get some kind of time travel, because now they have the slingshot maneuver and then whatever the hell they did in the naked time. So we better get some damn time travel. And that's it. That's it for me. I liked it. could have been better. Wasn't terrible. I wish it would have been more serious and they would have cut the comedy stuff because if it was all serious, it was a really, really good episode.
Yeah, I agree with you on the seriousness part. I don't really have notes down about my feelings, so I kind of just had to go with what I'm thinking about. But like, I think if this was more dramatic, this would have been an amazing episode. They could have been a big tension between them trying to get the information from them and trying to figure things out and built that up and made like a really big deal. And like, but even adding the second person they transported, I feel like was a waste of time. Like they did a lot of things in here that was very awkward and a waste of time. The jokes awkward, waste of time. The comedy awkward. It was so awkward and weird. I did have a thought though while this was going on. Why can't the ship run off solar power?
Yeah, because they're always out there. Like there has to be a sunlight reaching them in space pretty much everywhere, right?
Okay, then I thought about this. Did the idea of solar power exist in the 1960s when this show came out?
Okay, yeah, they nobody.
Like
they might not have even
I'm
thought that.
curious. Yeah, I'm not. It probably even thought about that. So now I'm curious. So I don't. Yeah, that's what I understand why more of these ships don't run off solar power. And you're close to the sun. You just did a fly by right by the sun. You can be overloaded over 150% energy capacity, whatever it was, and moved on. I'm just
Okay,
that's curious.
so apparently solar panels were first invented by Charles Fritz in 1883.
Okay, so they know about solar panels then. Okay, they got no excuses.
Yeah,
So I don't know. I guess the idea of using the sun as a power source should be more bigger in this kind of place. But
yeah,
so overall, let's say I like the episode. Like I said, I'm just really critiquing about just the comedy was awkward and stuff like that. But I just feel like this episode was about a 6 maybe, and that's me just saying I like it. It was a 6. Honestly, I feel like it could have been a 9 or 10 if it was better edited. It could
yes,
and better edited. It could have been a 9 or 10. It could have been one of the episodes you talk about forever because it's such good content. It's such a good content idea. They just wasted a lot of time.
yeah. They couldn't decide on the tone of the episode, which is
Yeah,
really what threw
but
me
yeah,
off.
I agree.
So we got a little bit of time to get into some light trivia here because here's one that is really interesting to me. And according to IMDb, this is one of the rare occasions in which it can be seen that the middle finger on actor James Doohan, which is Scotty, the middle finger on his right hand is actually missing. That he takes great pains to conceal its absence during the series. But there's a scene here where he's leaning on the hand and only 3 of his fingers are visible. And I did not notice he was missing a finger, so he's obviously done
No,
a really good job.
I would never even look at his hand.
Yeah,
Or would have thought it's part of the show. I would have thought they said he blew his hand off while doing some interaction thing.
yeah.
I assume that's what it would have been. I wouldn't even thought about it being him for real.
So, also in the beginning of this, when they intercepted the radio broadcast about the moon landing, that actually happened almost 2 years after the filming of this episode, which is pretty crazy.
Oh, first movement. That's interesting.
Yeah, so they predicted it pretty well there.
Before the Simpsons.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think they eventually go on to predict the Simpsons? That would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be great. Some yellow aliens. Yellow aliens with point of hair.
Yeah. Spock goes into Kirk's quarters. He's like, "What are you doing, Captain?" And Kirk's like, "Oh, I'm watching this funny cartoon about this yellow family here."
This yellow alien thing with spikes on the head. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, that'd be funny.
So apparently, also Roger Perry, which is the guy that played John Christopher, liked his Starfleet uniform so much that he asked DeForest Kelley, who is Bones, if he could take the shirt home. And DeForest Kelley said, "Well, they frown upon that, but you could possibly just stick it in your bag and nobody's going to say anything." And Roger Perry decided not to steal the uniform, but after seeing the eventual success and the legacy of Star Trek, he regretted that he didn't steal it.
Yeah,
so is not that I'm advocating here because I'm not, but I guess the lesson is if you feel like you should steal something, steal it. I do not condone stealing.
You only live once.
Yeah. And this is also not the last time we would see the slingshot time travel maneuver. So that's good to know. They do apparently do that again. Okay, here's another good one. This episode was originally going to be the second part of a two-part story that would have begun in Star Trek The Naked Time. In an earlier draft of the script, when Kirk ordered a hyperbolic course, he wanted the direction to be doesn't matter the way we came toward Earth. And then apparently, when they did their Naked Time thing, this is where they would have ended up. That would have been that would have been a better episode, I think.
Probably, because I'm trying to figure out which one the Naked Time was.
The Naked Time was the one when they went down to the planet. Dipshit takes his protective gear off, and they get a virus, and it makes everybody act really crazy. Sulu does the sword thing.
Yeah.
And they fix that by time travel. They travel backwards in time to before it happened.
Oh, so that's the one we were talking about earlier. So if they had time travel, they would have ended on this episode. Oh, that would have been awesome.
Because Kirk tells them when they fix the whole, they set their hyperbolic course to fix the whole virus thing and go back in time to before it happened. He was apparently going to say it doesn't matter what direction they go in as long as they head towards Earth. And then they head towards Earth, but they end up going too far and end up in this timeline or this time period.
Oh, see, they ruined the episode. They shouldn't even brought that up because now I'm upset.
Yeah.
Now I'm upset those two aren't together because that would have been a great idea.
Yep.
Oh, man. That's a great idea.
Yeah. So apparently also, I'm probably going to butcher her first name, but Majel Barrett is the one that did the ship's computer voice in this. And,
okay.
And so she's been in this. She was actually the original number one. She was number one in the pilot episode with Pike.
Oh, okay.
And she also plays the nurse that has the feelings for Spock.
Oh.
Yeah. So she has a couple of different roles. She also did the ship's computer voice here. Apparently she was also born in Cleveland. So, another Ohioan.
That's how we do.
Yeah. So that is, I think that's going to be it. I don't want to go through everything it says on here because there's a lot of trivia and I just like to hit a couple of them. But, that's going to be it for me for this one. We'll call it there. Next episode is going to be season 1, episode 20, Court Martial. Paul, what's the what's the synopsis?
And
for
the
that
synopsis says Captain Kirk's career is at stake when he's put on trial for the loss of a crewman during an ion storm. Ion storm. So obviously, this is going to be awesome. This will be the first episode we'll be able to see how the court system works in the future.
I'm already fucking dying because he's lost 46 people so far. Why is he getting arrested for this one?
I don't know. Apparently this guy was somebody important, apparently.
Yeah, those other 46 people? But that motherfucker, we liked him.
Yeah. That's the president's son. Oh my gosh. He knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, like, oh no.
Oh God. All right. Well,
my biggest thing about the whole episode, I'm interested to see the court system. I really want to see how that works.
Yeah, not just like their little court martial on the ship that they did to Spock.
Yeah, something different.
Okay, well, yeah, I think that's going to do it for us on this one. As always, we're on Twitter at WWST_podcast. Gmail is WWSTpod@gmail.com. And we are wherever you find your favorite podcasts. So, Paul, if you don't have anything else, then that is going to be it for this episode.
Laters.
Wow, it's really weird not having Dan here for that. But all right, you can stop whenever you want.